dive on engineering possibilities. Over the next hour, we're going to explore the concepts and the real-life application of how technology can benefit all, which is our refreshed vision guiding our work towards 2030. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the lands that we're meeting on. Here in Brunswick West, my home is on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. And you might notice that on each of our panels, we all have our name and the lands with which we're dialing in from. So I hope you brought your lunch, because this is, of course, our lunchtime session. You're not going to want to tear yourself away from the screen, so settle in. In a moment, I'm going to hand you over to our host, Gaetano Romano. He's EWB Senior Engineering Manager, and he's brought some awesome panelists together. Kim Axworthy, who's our Regional Lead and Engineering on Country Specialist. We've got Dr. Andy Drain, who's our Technology Development Lead, and Mariny Chheang. She's our Technology Development Specialist in Cambodia. But first, on today's session. 2 weeks ago, we launched our 2030 strategy, and we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. So we set aside a bit of extra time to go deep on our technology concepts. So our host, Gaetano, will unpack what we mean by technology benefiting all. And Gaetano will then bring our specialists, Kim, Andy and Mariny, into the conversation around the real world applications of these concepts. I'm actually going to hand straight over to Gaetano. So take it away, Gaetano. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Melanie, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. So as Melanie was mentioning before, we had the opportunity to introduce our engineering program at EWB at the strategy launch. But the time we were given was quite short, and we thought would have been useful to have a follow-up webinar, and here we are today with the idea of presenting some of the projects we are working on with the help of my colleagues, Kim, Andy and Mariny. Thank you for being with us today. So obviously there is more than we do that we will not be able to present today, but at least this would be a good starting point for us to talk with you and discuss with you our engineering program. So sometimes I think of the engineering program as a puzzle with different pieces. And there are two pieces of the puzzle that I really would like you to keep in mind in the webinar today. The first piece of the puzzle, the first element, is why we do this, who we work for. And you may have heard us saying and talking about technology that benefit all. So the question I would like to explore now with you is who those all are. We work with communities and individuals that do not have the same kind of access to services, facilities, infrastructure, technologies, opportunities as we do. People and communities that for some reason have remained behind. And sometimes when some technologies are not there, and you will hear from my colleagues few of the stories, it's even difficult to live a life with dignity. So what we want to do, we really want to break inequality in the world where we live as much as we can. And we want to ensure that people can access services, technologies, facilities, infrastructure, and opportunities so that they can make their decisions and they can change their lives in the way they want, following their dreams and their wishes. So this is the people we want to work for. And you will hear more from my colleagues, but if you have any follow-up questions, then put them in the box, because it will be interesting to talk more about who the all we want them to benefit the technologies are. I also would like to acknowledge the Australian government and the ANCP and the Australian community and public. They generously support us financially, and they allow us to work. They make our work possible, and we could not work without their support. And this brings me to the second piece of the puzzle, or the second element I wanted to discuss with you in my introduction, which is how you can engage and you can involved in our work. In the strategy launch, we talked about our goals, our objectives, and we have set up very ambitious goals. And we will not be able to reach those goals if we work in isolation. We want to work with others. We work with partner organizations, community partners, volunteers, individuals, the private sector, schools, universities, companies in many different ways. And I would like you to consider, to think about, while you hear the stories that we are going to tell you in a few minutes, how do you see yourself in this journey with EWB? How do you see yourself involved in the things we do, if you think they are interested and you would like to be involved? And again, if you have any questions around that, we would be very happy to try to find some answers. So I am at the end of my short introduction, and it's better to talk about what we do on the ground. And I think we could start with Andy today. So what we use in our work is our EWB technology development approach. I think it's quite unique, and it's really like the tool and the approach that I think allow us to make our work different from what others do and successful. So I would like you, Andy, to introduce the technology development approach of EWB, to talk a bit more about that, and to hear from you why you think that's a special kind of approach in our work. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Gaetano. And hi, everyone. Really nice to chat with you all today. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about the TDA, the technology development approach. So I think the best way to think about it is this really nice natural progression from human-centered design, which we use a lot at EWB, and really trying to bring human-centered design, our project management that we really need to do to be effective as an organization, in line with the engineering design, the technology development work that we're striving to do as we go forward. We all know human-centered design is a fantastic tool for understanding community and collaborating and being creative. But really to use that as a fully fledged engineering design process or project management process, there were more details and a bit more work to do to build that out to become an organizational process. So over the last 18 months, we've spent a lot of time doing just that. I think the best way to think about the TDA is with three components. So we have the guiding principles. So these are really practically orientated guidelines that try and link EWB's new values all the way down to the work we're doing with community and the engineering decision making that we have to make on a day-to-day basis. We also have our tools and techniques. So this is a big database that we're building at the moment of really great tools that sit across contextual learning, creativity, systems thinking, and human factors. And as we build that out and share that with our network, that's going to make our practitioners better guided to do all this really complex design, community development, engagement work that we need to do as an organization. And then finally, the technology development process. So this is a step-by-step process that can be repeatable and guide the way that our practitioners and volunteers and educators move through a design project. And also provides a lot more detail at the back end of that, the detailed engineering design, the piloting, the feedback from that pilot back into your detailed design, and then you're scaling up for implementation. So that's really the TDA in a nutshell. Thanks, Gaetano.
Thanks, Andy. And would you be able to present for our audience some of the projects, any of the projects where we have used the technology development approach?
Yeah, sure thing. So I think a really nice illustrative example is the Accessible Moto project. So I think a few people on this call will know about this, some really intimately. So the Accessible Moto is a project in partnership with Light for the World and DDSP based in provincial Cambodia. So the role of the accessible modo is providing wheelchair users in rural areas with better flexibility and independence in the transport options they actually have. This project's really nice because not only was it a community identified need, but it was actually a community prototype that when we were engaging with this community through our AgriLab co-design work, this prototype you can see was already built. It was already in the community having great impact, really led by the local innovator, Romano, you can see who's riding the accessible moto at the moment. And so we could really learn about how valuable that concept was and how much local buy-in there was, and then work with community to figure out where are the engineering needs on this project that we could support. To do that, we went back to the beginning of our design process, did a whole lot of great human-centered activities, empathy mapping, storyboarding, understanding user experience, understanding safety and design, doing a lot of review work around that, and really working towards a version 2 that we're building this year with community, and beyond version 2, scaling up towards a wider implementation, also looking at the role of electric vehicles and what kind of enabling environment might be needed to allow for that transition over the next 3 to 5 years. And I think the other really nice piece about this project is the way we use EWB's mobilization function. So the way we engage students and volunteers and pro bono to really drive this project forward. So here's what that structure looks like for the accessible moto. So we have a mechanical design team supporting the version 2 of the chassis, the walls, the drive system, all of that kind of stuff. Alongside of that, we're developing a really nice IoT solution to remote monitor the units when they're in pilot starting in April next year. So that's going to allow us to collect really good accelerometer and GPS data, and then along with another software team, visualize that data in really useful ways, like heavy braking, rough roads, smooth roads, understanding what flexibility and independence actually means in terms of rural transport. Alongside of that, we're looking forward past this pilot. What will this look like if this pilot's successful? How can we actually engage with local manufacturers, people with disability, and the manufacturing facilities we have available to take this to scale to 50 to 100 to 200 units over the next few years? And then, of course, we have our great Cambodian engineering team who are doing a lot of work on the ground with community, with local fabricators, trying to understand all the complexities on the ground that make this a great pilot going forward and hopefully a really important solution as we align with new local government direction towards disability inclusive transport and also local manufacturing and local capacity building. So that's the accessible moto. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. And this is really a good example and links very well to what I was saying before, that technology can really change the life of people for the better and can allow people to access more opportunities than what they do right now. I would like to remain in the Cambodian context. And Andy, you were mentioning a team of engineers, and we have one of our engineers here with us today, Mariny. You are a young Cambodian engineer. You have been working with us for almost 1 year now. Can you please just talk about one of the projects you are involved in and what kind of impact are you trying to achieve in the communities where you work?
Yes, thank you, Gaetano, and hi to everyone who's watching here. Yes, so I am Mariny, working in EWB in Cambodia. So before I'm talking about the positive impact of the project, I would like to talking about the EWB in Cambodia that has been developing 3 projects for 2020 that we are working in place, like Cambodia rainwater harvesting, rehabilitation of rural water supply, and all-season upgrade. So this time I will raise only one positive impact project to present here, which is ASU. That of the full name of ASU, it means that all-season upgrade. So yeah, this project is a sanitation technology solution that apply on the high groundwater environment on 15 households in 2 districts in Gondar province, which is the project is the second phase of the upgrade from 3CP project. And those 15 households had made a hole on their latrine pit ring to discharge to the environment and decide to their own land without treatment. And you can see in the picture, the black water came out from the pit with the bad smell. And you know, this wastewater contain high hazardous substance like pathogen, bacteria, and might contaminate to the groundwater as well, since this area is the high groundwater environment. So yeah, so this wastewater pollution could affect to the human health, especially children, like fever, diarrhea, and any infectious disease. Because children living in community, you know, they like to walking around and playing on the ground around their home and with their barefoot and sometimes undressed body. Yeah, so that is the reason why EWB AVI volunteer and IDE technical team and EWB engineering team, they took the initiative to develop an appropriate sanitation technology by using TDA, that we call Technology Development Approach, to design a treatment pit system we call ASU to filtrate the wastewater from the existing latrine pit before discharge to environment. And after the ASU has been pilot and finishing the sampling stage, the household interview has been conducted to evaluate the ASU functionality and the user perception to analyze the technology result. And this is an example case that we got a positive perception from a woman who sitting on the bed that you can see in the picture, and her name is Sarun. She is the housewife with 3 children, and she said that after using the ASU system, the environment around her house is better than before, without bad smell, and the soil around pig look clean too. And she added that her toilet is easy to pour or flush by using only 2 to 3 small buckets, while before they use about 4 to 5 small buckets. So, and her children are more healthy by not fever and diarrhea very often as before. And one more thing, she said that she is the housewife who usually working in the kitchen, which is near the toilet. And it is great for her to make food for her family with feeling like more comfortable and more healthy. So this is the positive impact project that technology could improve environment for sustainability, people health, and well-being. Yes.
Thank you, Mariny. And, it's really a good example to see how a technology can make the life of people much, much better. If a family can now access a functional toilet, a toilet that will be functional in the long term, while they couldn't in the past, we can see the impact on the communities, surely. I have a question about whether there is an impact of our program also on the partners we work with and on the masons and private companies, for example. Is there like a kind of skill transfer process in the work you do?
Yeah, well, EWB AVI volunteer working with IDE engineering team have shared their knowledge as well as transfer their what they have learned with the professional education, and they share their skill related to the sanitation technology design to the local staff. And the local staff train to the local business owner that we call LVO and the constructor or the mason on how to install the ASU treatment pit system in the village. So for this project, there are 2 LBO and 5 local constructors in Konda province were trained, and we also have purchased the toilet material from them to construct and install this 15 ASU system. And moreover, one of the ASU system was constructed and installed by our field professional and engineer to be a role model and example for LBO and Mason to learn in the technical skill and using their knowledge to improve their career pathway. So As you can see in the picture, our ABI volunteer and IDE engineering team were constructing and installing the ASU system with ABO and the mason. And for another 14 ASU system, we just monitor and support them to ensure that they are able to build and the system appropriately and skillfully. And therefore, this is the ASU sanitation. If the ASU sanitation technology is successful or possible to scaling up, that will be not only improve the environment and the human health, but also improve the local business income and increase more work opportunity for the local constructor living in the community as well. So that is called technology benefits all.
Thanks, Mariny. And maybe it would be interesting to explore the same concept in the Australian context. And Kim, you are the manager of our engineering on country program. That is part of our engineering program. How do we develop technologies that benefit all in your program?
Yeah, thanks, Gaetano. So in Australia, for our Engineering Country program, we use that term technology holistically to incorporate a focus on infrastructure and engineering that enables small, remote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and outstations in regional Australia to live safely and productively on country. So it often takes the form of either the provision of pro bono engineering services for the design of appropriate infrastructure and essential services for those communities. And also then, on the other hand, looking at appropriate technology and design, sort of along the lines of what Andy was talking about earlier, utilising our sort of volunteer base to help design, prototype and test innovations that could benefit the communities we work with and respond to some of their technical challenges. So interestingly, as the Engineering on Country program develops, I think we're seeing an increased focus and demand for ranger bases, Indigenous ranger bases, and seeing those as really enabling infrastructure, enabling technology for significant outcomes, both for community in terms of social, economic, cultural outcomes, but also strong environmental and conservation outcomes as a result of having a ranger program on country. So as an example, we've got we've had a long-term partnership with the Lama Lama people in Cape York in Queensland. So several years ago, EWB supported the design and construction of the Port Stewart Ranger Base that you can see here in these pictures with a number of our partners and strong participation by the Lama Lama Rangers. So prior to having this Ranger Base on country, they had to run their Ranger program from a nearby town in Colin with only 2 rangers. But once the Ranger Base was successfully built, which you can see on the right here, utilised locally cut down and milled bush timber and a design that was appropriate to the local site and conditions and the construction capacity of the rangers as well. The numbers jumped pretty quickly up to 6 full-time rangers, and today there's 18 rangers and 10 trainee rangers, as well as a number of different casual contractors, all working to restore the land, sustain the community, conduct essential fire management, pest and invasive species work while protecting a fragile and biodiverse environment up there in Cape York. So we also worked there, you can see on the left, on the improved safe water supply system, you can see. So as a result of this really enabling infrastructure, there's now increased housing and more traditional owners and Lama Lama people are able to live there on country and connect to their own culture, their ancestors' stories and history, and provide that connection for their families and children. And we're now working together with Lama Lama on a tourism camp development, also an airstrip, so increased livelihood opportunities to enable them to stay on country. And benefit both the environment, the local natural resource management needs, and their cultural and health needs as well. So I think the Ranger Base is a really interesting case study. Interestingly, there was a study conducted by Social Ventures Australia in 2016 that found that they used a social return on investment analysis, and that found that based on the investment in Ranger Base operations between financial year 9 and 15, for every $1 that was invested in Ranger Bases, in the Ranger program, approximately $3.40 of social, economic, cultural and environmental value was created for stakeholder. stakeholders. So I think that's a really interesting sort of stat, and we're now working on a number of different ranger-based projects with other community partners throughout Queensland and WA, as we see that ranger base is a really valuable piece of infrastructure or technology, along with all of the associated services like water supplies and power supplies, etc. obviously. But that idea of that infrastructure or technology having the ability to unlock a whole suite of positive community outcomes.
Yeah, and can you elaborate a bit more how engineering can unlock those communities' outcomes?
Yeah, so I put together a little diagram here. Might be a bit hard to see. So, but the idea of, I guess the initial stages with the community is often a co-visioning. I'll talk through it and then tell you what it is that sort of co-visioning approach of working together with community to identify what the community infrastructure needs, identifying where the engineering gaps are in that as well, and what we're able to bring to the table, what sort of we could work together on with our partners and networks that we have as well. So once that's completed, we often define quite a nice little engineering project or scope of works that's either done pro bono or through our volunteer mobilisation processes. And that's that initial blue dot there of having the engineering. So in the example of a range base or any other piece of sort of critical community infrastructure, that initial engineering project could be looking at the concept design and the costing, which enables that next blue dot of the community to be able to go and apply for funding, whether that's through government funding or private funding or grant opportunities, to be able to then, on a commercial contract basis, find the detailed design, the development approvals and the construction. Obviously that then unlocks actual infrastructure for the community that they've identified as a priority. And then that leading to the actual community outcomes, which are increased opportunity, health, education, livelihoods, employment opportunities, cultural connection, environmental conservation, and ultimately for EWB, that ability to live safely and productively on country, which is the end goal, I guess, of the Engineering on Country program. That's a, I had a little picture there. So that's the commissioning of the water supply system there at Lama Lama, with all of rangers around that you can see that are now able to safely live and work on country with adequate, safe drinking water and, you know, a safe office and places to actually do the critical work that they do.
Thanks, Kim. And we start receiving a few questions. Maybe we can start with the first one. So let me give a look. Yeah, there is a question. I'm not sure from whom. Can you tell me about how EWB works with volunteers to develop technology? Andy, would you like to say a bit more about that? And you were mentioning before the different ways volunteers can be involved in our program. Can you elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, sure thing. And we do have an individual, Shanuka, who is working really hard to develop this even more right now. As far as the ways that my project work engages with volunteers, I guess there's a couple of different ways that I've been working. So there's what we call the conceptual design phase, or kind of the creativity phase of a project. And we've done quite a few design sprint style activities with volunteers where we have a really great problem definition and we want a really wide range of creative solutions to help us then screen and experiment and refine down to maybe a particular detailed design. And so that's something that, like, the design challenge at universities is really great for. We're also working with professional engineers as part of the Agri Lab project on that kind of creative side. There's also the detailed design, the nuts and bolts of a project. And we've worked with people, professional electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, systems engineers, obviously wash and chemical engineers, to work out, you know, here's the concept that we know is really great, but how do we turn that into an effective and safe solution? So for example, in the accessible motor, we have individuals helping with chassis design and simulation, drive system calculations to make sure the drive system that we've got is right for the environment, all of that kind of stuff. Thirdly, we have design review. So we have a number of individuals who help us with critical review. So it's a bit less of a time commitment, but really important so that we know our work is being externally reviewed. And we're getting the benefits of, really experienced engineers contributing into projects. And then probably finally, and a space that's opened up recently because of our new electronics IoT space, we've got a bit more of that design, fab, build, prototype, play in the lab kind of support from the University of Western Australia, from the Adelaide, South Australian EWB chapter, to create really nice either bespoke electronics like the monitoring and evaluation system we're building, or the Birthwatch project in Myanmar, where South Australia are really designing and iterating through this electrical prototype that we can then actually work with our partner in Myanmar to test and develop once we have that prototype in place.
Thank you, Andy. And I would also like to mention our partnership with the Australian Volunteer Programme. So we actually presented the work we do with them recently at the International Volunteer Conference last week, I think. And this is a very interesting partnership model, because this allows us to, through the Australian Volunteer Programme channel, to deploy skilled professionals in the field. So one of them was in one of the photos that Mariny was showing in her presentation. And the program really gives the opportunity to people that want to have exposure to how engineering works in other countries to be part of a project on the ground in the field. And they are often matched with one of our partner organizations. So it's really like a very good learning experience about engineering in the countries where we work, but also how other development actors, private companies work to develop their own technologies. So that's also a nice way to learn more about the work we do and being involved 24 hours a day for many, many weeks and months. Yeah. I think we have a question now from Brianna, and Melanie is saying that she will ask the question directly. Melanie?
I believe we've brought Brianna into the panel. Go ahead, Brianna.
Okay. Hey, sorry. I was just wondering if there's going to be any sort of live updates on the tech, like within the tech dev space, just because I know in particular within my university chapter, there's a lot of interest and like want for engagement and these kind of like seeing the real-time things that EWB are doing, especially now as there is that opportunity for university engagement. Like it's really encouraging to, I guess, sort of support the community feel of EWB. So yeah, whether there are any plans for that sort of real-time updates, whether it's in the form of a blog that was previously done or anything.
Yeah, thanks, Brianna, for your question. And it's something that we are really exploring right now. We were amazed to see that there was so much interest around the strategy launch. We had more than 300 people that wanted to attend or try to attend the launch. And today as well, there are a lot of people now in this webinar. So the work we are doing is not only as a follow-up of the strategy, but also to understand how this kind of interaction can become more regular and more structured going forward. And if there is interest from the other side, as you are suggesting, and I believe there is, then I guess we would be interested in putting in place a mechanism for this to happen on a regular basis. So happy to continue this conversation with universities or with students as well. I can see another question from Jeff. and Jeff is not asking this directly. Thanks, Brianna. So the question is, how are community needs identified, assessed, and prioritized before design commences? And how is community buy-in secured? It's a very interesting question. And Kim, Mariny, Andy, you are all welcome to answer that. Maybe we can start with Kim, and maybe you can hear a bit from Mariny as well later on. Please, Kim.
Sure. So from the Australian side, yeah, Mariny won't touch on your side. You can answer that one. I guess from the Australian side, we receive requests for assistance from communities, either directly from the communities themselves or the Aboriginal corporation that represents the communities, or the community partner, another community organisation that they work with. For example, we work closely with the Centre for Appropriate Technology in Queensland, and so they might have that pre-existing relationship with the community. They're working on a variety of different community development priorities, and identify that there's an engineering opportunity there that needs to be filled, such as a concept design or yeah, development approval, or whatever the next piece of the puzzle is for the community. So in terms of having their involvement, oops, I've lost the wording. Community needs identified. So the community themselves identifies what their needs are. Assessment and prioritisation, we have an in-house process that we go through there to assess every opportunity that comes through the door in terms of, is it a match for meeting our sort of strategic objectives as an organisation? Is it also a match for the capacity and capabilities and interests of either our corporate partners, if it's going out as a pro bono piece of work, or our members, if it's going out as a volunteer opportunity, or if it's done in-house for our staff and contractors that way. And community buy-in, obviously the communities are the owners of all of these projects. So they ultimately they're involved every step of the way. So designs are always co-designed with community. And yeah, any designs, obviously it's all back to the community to give feedback, to demand changes, or to take it where they will in the future. But Mariny, you might want to touch on how that's different in Cambodia, or the same.
Yeah, that's not much different. And as one project like rainwater harvesting system that we are working with another NGO called CRDT, Cambodian Team Rural Development Team, that we are working closely with them, because CRDT is the organization that working in the community, and they know what the community really wants. So as we are engineers, we are not designing the technology for ourselves, but to fit with the community, we have to go to the community and work with them and sit with them, ask them what they really want to do to make the technology more suitable for them, and they really like to use and happy to use that technology. So we always work closely and go to the community before we starting the design, the technology or design the project. So we have to get more idea and like ideation from the community, and we combine their what they want and their idea to combine with our engineer and volunteer, and then we design the one technology that really comprehensive and really impressive for them to use. Yeah, so it's not that much different from you. Yeah.
Thanks, Mariny. And I'm reading another couple of questions, and maybe you can answer the two of them together. What is the best way for students to get involved in these projects? And the second question is, are there opportunities for experienced engineers to provide guidance, mentorship for engineers based remotely? If so, how does one go about this? So definitely there are many different ways for students to be involved in these projects. And I will mention this later, but we'll ask you to sign up our newsletter. And in the newsletter, we describe all our initiatives and the different ways and opportunities for students to work with us and to join us. We have university chapters everywhere in Australia, I believe. So joining one of the chapters could also be a good way for students to be involved in our projects. So Andy was mentioning Shenuka, our mobilization lead before. He is the person that helped us coordinating all the work we do with chapters and with students. So he would be the right person to talk with. And this is for Ingrid that was asking this question. So then it's about experienced engineers to provide guidance remotely. This is currently happening in our program. We currently have 4 engineers that are supporting remotely our program in Cambodia, Timor-Leste, and Vanuatu. 2 will start soon in Vanuatu. It's not necessarily an easy task, particularly when the engineer doesn't know very well the local context or has not been exposed to that specific local context before. And some of the engineers that work with us remotely have in mind the idea that to do some of data assignment in country when this might become possible. So there are opportunities. They are very well structured. I would say there is a very well defined plan that is agreed between our teams, like Mariny is working with some of our volunteers, for example, and us. And there is also some kind of logistic and operational support for volunteers through AVP. So if you're interested in learning more, you can contact me myself, or Shenuka through our website, and we can talk more about that later. There is another question from the Tech Magic for the whole panelists. Question 4 from Pita. To what extent are our local EWB staff and volunteers liaising with and making use of technologies developed by unis like WEDC in UK, consultants like Orecon, appropriate tech centers in current projects? So I'm happy to initiate an answer on this, and maybe Kim or Andy or Mariny can add a bit more on how we work more broadly in the sector with others around technology. So we don't develop technologies in isolation. In the countries where we work, we are part of the sectoral coordination. As an example, for water and sanitation, we have quite a prominent role in the water and sanitation coordination, particularly in the space of sanitation in challenging environment. And this allows us to be in contact with other organizations and companies that work in the space of technology development. And very often the work we do is done together with others, or sometimes we just continue the work that has been initiated by others, and the other way around. So there was recently a study conducted by the Sanitation in Challenging Environment Hub, I think it's the name, and was conducted all over the world. So we were consulted, and we provide a lot of information of the work we did to inform the study that they are doing that would have an impact, I would say, all over the world. Tim or Andy or Mariny, would you like to add a bit more on this?
Go, Andy.
Yeah, sure thing. I think there's maybe another reading of this question as well, which is around how we identify appropriate solutions that maybe already exist, as opposed to starting from zero with every community need that we identify. And so I think this is something that we are working quite well on now, actually looking for ways of delivering projects without a ground up, completely new design that requires that level of development and rigor to get to the point where an off-the-shelf solution may also provide an equal amount of value. For example, our monitoring and evaluation, this IoT solution in Cambodia is all based around a $50, $45 smartphone that basically provides all the functionality. And so the project's really around software development and network comms and not around hardware. Whereas it could easily become a hardware project that takes much longer and leads to less impact. So I think finding that balance is also really important. I think as an organization, we're also really good at knowing where those solutions live, whether it's like the Engineering for Change solution library or our different catalogs of design challenge or fourth year research project or master's reports that we have on file that we can draw from really quickly, or our connection to EWB International. I think as an organization, we're quite good at not just starting from zero as the default.
Yes, Sandy, that what you are talking is really right. That I just want to raise about the many projects in Cambodia that I am working with another partner, and some of the technology already initiated by the partner, and we are just the EWB provide the technical person to support them to make that technology more better than before. And yeah, I would like to saying in here as well, to saying to our volunteer that they keen to support us, and they are my mentor, that they provide a good technology and idea that they learn from their school and they learn from their professional work in Australia to support like my country that is the developing country right now, to make the technology more to change the people behavior, especially in the community. So right now I'm working with the volunteer who is working remotely, and we are working on two projects, ASU and that I just presented before. We are in the process of analyzing and interpret data, and the remotely volunteers, they are helping us to interpret data and to recommend and the technology to make it more better for the next future study, as well as the another project, the rural water supply, that our remotely engineer, they also support us to design it, to calculate it, and to research to find more reference to make it more sustainable in the community. You know that rainwater, the rural water supply system already designed and installed by the company and working with the one NGO that I mentioned, CRDT, but that technology is not that that system is not that working very well. So they ask our organization EWB to support them in the technical and to make it better. Yes. So this is what our organization are working.
Thanks, Mariny. And Kim, did you wanted to add anything or?
I think it's been covered well. I just did, well, actually, no, I did the just one on where we are sort of developing new designs or technologies or anything that could be applicable to other communities. We do try and make that publicly available as well. So, for example, we've been working on some designs for simple rainforest dwellings and ablutions blocks that can be made locally using just locally available bush timber. And we've got a bunch of sort of engineering drawings ready for construction that are nearly ready to be just publicly available, open source, so that can benefit, you know, anybody that needs it, particularly probably in the Cape York region, because it complies with the bush living codes and design codes up there. So where there are outcomes from our projects that might be applicable more broadly, we do try and share that out there as well to ensure that technology gets out to benefit as many people as possible.
Thanks, Kim. We are running out of time in a way, but there is a question from Rishika. I hope I pronounced the name well. Here you are, Rishika. I can see you on the panel. Can you ask your question directly?
Yeah. I'm just going to keep it really short since you all are running out of time. We know at the beginning of every project, there are certain risks you take into account or things you would have learned from your previous work that helped you be more prepared. So under the current circumstances, because of the pandemic, what kind of hurdles are you anticipating while delivering future EWB projects?
Yes, thanks for your question. And again, I can start answering, and maybe some of my colleagues can add more and elaborate more. The point is that there is not an answer that fits all the different contexts where we work. Each context is really different, and the situation, for example, in Vanuatu in the Pacific, where COVID-19 hasn't arrived yet, and hopefully is not going to arrive, all the issues related to COVID-19 are really related to the economy and to the lack of economic opportunities with the reduction of tourism, for example. While in other countries there is really a health issue that need to be resolved right now. I believe in certain circumstances there is a problem with access to local communities when our staff and volunteers were or are not allowed to travel yet. But maybe Kim or Mariny or Andy, would you like to add a bit more?
Well, within the Australian context, we've been doing a lot more of the desktop design and a lot less of the travel, none of the travel for the last sort of 6 months or so. So that, yeah, has its own set of challenges. And obviously it's always much more effective if you can sit with somebody face to face and have discussions. But having said that, yeah, we're certainly within Australia, I guess we're hoping that things improve soon. You know, access has opened up a lot. I'm over in WA. We've even said that we're opening up. So, you know, it is starting to move. So things might be going back to normal a little bit more closely soon. But yeah, if you want to talk about the international context, Andy or Mariny?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments here. It's such a good question. I think there's been a couple of silver linings around how we are better utilizing technologies as a result of all of the challenges. I was based in Cambodia. I'm now based in Melbourne due to COVID repatriation. So I definitely feel these changes. We're using a lot of great online collaboration tools now. We've also started to really actively shift things like baseline data collection to be a bit more innovative and use tools like Kobo and use phone and digital means for collecting data that may have been a face-to-face data collection process and will be still in certain circumstances, but really trying to find that balance. The remote monitoring that we're planning to do for the accessible moto is another example of that. And that's really good because we can support our rural partners. We have a really great partner we work with called DDSP. We can support them to actually deliver a lot of that community engagement through this technology-enabled process that may not have been possible in the past, as well as pulling people into great collaborative chats where everyone's on a level playing field because everyone's on the end of a Zoom call instead of having 20 people in one room and one person calling in. So yeah, there's challenges, but there's also some silver linings there, I think.
Yeah, I just want to share about what I'm doing and I experience working like remotely like this. You know, this is the first time for me as well that working remotely and especially while the Zoom and email. So I think it seemed like more effort, I can say. Yeah, the first time maybe more effective than we are working in the office because we set the schedule and we always meet each other on time. Like for example, right now I'm working with the remote volunteer, and we set the schedule. We have to meet every Monday, for example. So every Monday at 2 p.m. we have to meet and we talk about our project and we design. It seems like we still sitting face to face working together. So the result is still get on time. Just only a few projects that we cannot finish it this year, but because of we have a less human resource, but the project that we plan to finish this year is still on the time that we plan. So yeah, working remotely is not bad, I can say. But actually, in the Cambodia situation for the field work, I can go to the field, but just apply the COVID risk management to make sure that we are safe and not spread any disease or make the community scared of us. So we all have to be careful and have to apply the risk management. Yeah, so I think it's okay for me to work even in remotely or in the office or in face-to-face.
Thank you, Mariny, for your answer. Thank you, Rishika, for your question. And I now have the difficult task to wrap up all of this in less than 2 minutes, just to be within the time we gave ourselves for the webinar. I really would like to thank all of you for your participation, your interesting questions. We were not able to answer all of them. I can see here in the chat box, there are many others that are very interested and would have been interesting to have the time to talk about. But we are going to send to all of you a follow-up email with the answers to all your questions. And as I was mentioning before, we will also invite you to sign up on our newsletter. And this will be the best way for you to be informed of what's happening in EWB, what are all our initiatives and work that we do. I believe we will present some of the volunteer opportunities for our international program in the next newsletter. And we're also going to talk about the Giving Day appeal, I think set for the 1st of December, where we try to involve people and to get more support. And this year, the appeal will be for the Engineering on Country program and the work that Kim is doing in the Australian program. I thank all of you again, particularly you, Kim and Andy and Mariny, for the support for the webinar, and you, Tech Magic, Melanie on the other side of the screen, and Beatrix that was beyond the scene supporting us. And I would like to wish a very good afternoon to all of you. Thanks. Thank you again for having been with us today. Goodbye. Goodbye.